I was sitting in my BMW outside the house where I grew up, engine running, staring at the front door I hadn't walked through in 6 months. My phone buzzed with another client emergency, but for once, I ignored it. My hand rested on my rounded belly, 6 months pregnant with a daughter, and I knew I couldn't bring her into this family until I told the truth about what happened behind that perfect white door. That was the moment I realized that being Harvard Law's youngest graduate, the first woman partner at Boston's most prestigious firm, valedictorian of everything I'd ever touched, none of it mattered. Because when I finally found the courage to tell them what their golden boy had done to me for 8 years, my mother looked me in the eye and said, "Don't ruin Marcus's future over something that happened so long ago." My name is Kathleen James. I'm 32 years old, and I've spent my entire life being the perfect daughter for parents who chose to protect my abuser. Until now. Before I continue, if you could like this video, subscribe to my channel, and let me know in the comments if you've ever felt like your achievements were just armor against the truth. I'd really appreciate it. Growing up in Brookline, Massachusetts, our house looked like something from a magazine. My parents, Dr. Patricia James, a pediatric surgeon, and Professor William James, who taught literature at Boston University, raised what everyone called exceptional children. Except they only saw the exception in one of us. Marcus was 4 years younger than me, but he was the sun our family orbited around. Where I had to earn perfect grades to get a nod of approval, Marcus got standing ovations for finger painting. He was gifted, creative, sensitive. When he threw tantrums, they called it artistic temperament. When I cried, they told me to be more mature. I learned early that love in our house was conditional. Marcus got it for existing. I had to perform for scraps. The abuse started when I was 8 and Marcus was 4. At first, it was games he wanted to play when our parents were busy with their careers. "Don't tell," he'd whisper. "It's our secret." And I didn't tell. Because even at 8, I knew that Marcus was precious and I was just reliable. By the time I was 12 and he was 8, the games weren't games anymore. They were demands, commands. And if I said no, he'd throw himself on the floor screaming until Mom came running, asking what I'd done to upset him now. "Kathleen," she'd sigh, "he's just a little boy. You're the big sister. You should know better." So I learned that my job was to keep Marcus happy and my parents proud. I threw myself into academics like my life depended on it. Because, in a way, it did. Every A+ was proof I mattered. Every award was evidence I deserved love, too. When I was 16 and Marcus was 12, we took a family vacation to the Cape. I thought I was finally safe. I was older now, stronger. I'd been accepted to Harvard early admission. Surely, I could protect myself. I was wrong. The night it happened, I was reading in the guest room when Marcus came in. He was bigger now, not the little boy everyone still saw. What he did that night wasn't a game. It wasn't childhood experimentation. It was assault, clear and violent and undeniable. I ran to my mother's room, sobbing, shaking, trying to find words for what I'd never been allowed to name. I told her everything. Every year, every incident, every time I'd tried to speak before. She listened with the clinical detachment she used on difficult diagnoses. When I finished, she was quiet for a long moment. Then she said, "Kathleen, you're under a lot of stress with college applications. Sometimes our minds play tricks on us when we're overwhelmed." I stared at her. "Mom, this isn't stress. This is..." "Don't be dramatic," she cut me off. "Marcus is your little brother. Yes, he can be challenging, but these stories you're telling, they're not helpful to anyone." That night, I realized I was completely alone. I was 16 years old, and the people who were supposed to protect me had chosen my abuser instead. So I did what I always did. I got perfect. Perfect grades, perfect SATs, perfect Harvard admission. I got an eating disorder and chronic insomnia too, but those weren't the kind of achievements my parents noticed. I graduated summa cum laude from Harvard Law at 25, youngest in my class. Made partner at Whitfield, Sterling and Associates at 29. Married David, a kind surgeon who thought I was brilliant and strong. I had everything I'd worked for, everything that was supposed to prove my worth. But I never told him about Marcus. I told myself it was in the past, that I'd risen above it, that successful people didn't dwell on childhood trauma. Then I got pregnant. When the ultrasound technician said, "It's a girl," I should have felt joy. Instead, I felt terror. Because suddenly, I wasn't just Kathleen anymore. I was going to be someone's mother. And the thought of bringing my daughter anywhere near Marcus made me physically sick. I started having panic attacks. Real ones, not the anxiety I'd managed for years, but full-blown, can't breathe, world-spinning attacks. David found me on the bathroom floor one night, hyperventilating. "Kathleen, what's happening? Is it the baby?" For the first time in our 5-year marriage, I told him the truth. All of it. He held me while I sobbed and said, "Why didn't you tell me?" "God, Kath, I'm so sorry." "Because," I whispered, "if my own parents didn't believe me, why would anyone else?" David's face went white. "Your parents know?" That's when I realized the full scope of what I'd accepted as normal. My husband, this good man who loved me, was horrified by what I'd learned to live with. We decided I needed to confront my family before the baby arrived. Not for closure. I'd given up on that fantasy. But for protection. I couldn't have Marcus around my daughter without everyone knowing exactly what he was. I spent weeks preparing. I found my old diaries, the therapy records from college I'd hidden from David, anything that documented what had happened. I also did something that broke my heart. I reached out to my younger cousins. 3 of them confirmed what I'd suspected. Marcus had targeted them too during family gatherings over the years. Sarah, now 19, broke down crying when I called. "I thought I was the only one," she whispered. "I thought it was my fault." My parents had known about at least one incident with our cousin Emma when she was 7. Emma's mother had called to complain, but my parents dismissed it as misunderstanding and asked the family not to make trouble. They knew. They'd always known. And they'd chosen Marcus anyway. I scheduled a family dinner for a Saturday evening. I wore my best courtroom suit, the navy Armani that made me feel invincible when facing hostile judges. I brought David for support and a folder full of evidence. When I told them I needed to discuss something serious about Marcus, Mom immediately went defensive. "Kathleen, I hope you're not going to dredge up those old stories again. We've been through this." "Those old stories," I said, placing the folder on the table, "are documented facts. And they didn't stop when I was 16. I laid it all out. The pattern of abuse, the other victims, the cover-ups. I watched my mother's face go through a dozen emotions before settling on cold fury. "I cannot believe," she said slowly, "that you would try to destroy this family with lies just because you're jealous of your brother's artistic success." My father nodded. "Marcus is sensitive, creative. You've always resented that he didn't have to work as hard as you did." I looked at them. My mother, the pediatric surgeon who'd taken an oath to protect children. My father, the literature professor who spent his life analyzing truth and deception. And I finally understood. This wasn't about evidence. It wasn't about truth. This was about their investment in a lie they'd built their parenting on. "I'm not asking you to choose," I said quietly. "I'm telling you what the boundaries will be. Marcus will never be alone with my daughter. If you want to be grandparents, you will acknowledge what happened and ensure he gets professional help." Mom laughed, actually laughed. "You can't be serious. You're going to hold our granddaughter hostage over childhood sibling rivalry?" That's when I knew it was over. I stood up, placed my hands on my belly, and looked at the people who'd raised me to believe their love was worth more than my safety. "You're right," I said. "I am holding her hostage. I'm protecting her from a family that chooses predators over children." Consider this my resignation from being your perfect daughter." We left that night. David was shaking with anger. How did they react like that? How is that even possible? Because, I said, feeling strangely calm, they've been practicing that response for 24 years. Subscribe for the next part of my story where I tell you what happened when I stopped being perfect and started being protective. Within a week, my mother called, not to apologize, but to negotiate. Maybe Marcus could see the baby sometimes with supervision. When I said no, she accused me of having postpartum depression, despite still being pregnant. My father sent emails with literary quotes about forgiveness and family loyalty. He never once mentioned protecting children. The extended family divided. Some relatives believed me, others didn't want to get involved. A few accused me of seeking attention or trying to become the victim instead of letting Marcus be the star. But here's what they didn't expect. I was done seeking their approval. I was 6 months pregnant with a daughter, and my job now was to protect her, not manage their feelings. David and I made a decision that shocked everyone. We moved. I gave up my partnership, my corner office, my perfect Boston life, and we relocated to San Francisco. I started working for a nonprofit legal clinic that helped survivors navigate the system I knew so well. For the first time in my life, my achievements weren't about proving my worth. They were about making space for others who'd been silenced. Emma was born on a Tuesday morning in March, tiny and perfect and completely mine to protect. When the nurse placed her in my arms, I whispered, "No one will ever tell you to stay quiet about someone hurting you. Your voice matters more than their comfort." 3 months after Emma's birth, Sarah called me. She'd been following my story and had decided to come forward too. Then my cousin Lisa reached out. Then Emma's sister. We filed a civil lawsuit together. Not for money, but for accountability. The case made local news, then national headlines. Corporate lawyer leaves partnership to pursue justice for childhood abuse. The backlash was swift. My parents hired a crisis management firm. Marcus gave interviews, painting himself as the victim of false accusations. Some of my former colleagues questioned my mental state. But something beautiful happened too. Other survivors started reaching out. Not just family members, but strangers who'd seen the coverage. Women and men who'd been the responsible ones, the perfect children, the ones whose achievements were really just survival strategies. I started speaking at law schools about trauma-informed legal advocacy. I testified before the California legislature about statute of limitations reform. I used my Harvard-trained voice to say what I'd been silenced from saying my whole life. Children deserve protection more than families deserve secrets. The civil case took 2 years. During that time, Marcus was investigated for current inappropriate behavior with minors in his art classes. 3 more victims came forward. My parents stood by him through every revelation. When we won the settlement, I used the money to expand the legal clinic and start a foundation for adult survivors of childhood sexual abuse. I named it the Emma Foundation, not after my daughter, but after the future I wanted her to have, one where children are believed. On Emma's 2nd birthday, my parents sent a card with no return address. Inside was a photo of themselves holding a World's Best Grandparents mug and a note. "When you're ready to put family first, we're here." I threw it away without a second thought. Today, Emma is 4. She's funny and fierce and completely unafraid to speak her mind. When she doesn't like something, she says so loudly and clearly. When someone makes her uncomfortable, she tells me immediately. She's everything I was never allowed to be: imperfect, honest, and unconditionally loved. I never became the perfect daughter they wanted. Instead, I became the protective mother my daughter deserved. And that's enough. That's everything. Subscribe and share this story if you believe children deserve voices louder than family secrets.